how could they move these 80-ton basalt boxes through these tunnels? This is an archaeological time bomb. They were unable to move any of these blocks. When engineers look at this stuff, they can see that this is tremendously advanced technology and building. Egyptologists don't have an explanation for obelisks. I mean, it's a massive undertaking. It's not meant to be there. And we don't know what these things were. Megaliths are what's important. The largest megaliths that we know about right now are the megaliths at Baalbek in Lebanon, which is right near the Syrian border. These stones weigh about 1,000 tons. The very largest stone that's ever been found in a quarry was found at Baalbek. It's a stone that's 1,650 tons. So why are people building with such giant blocks of stone, which would seem so difficult to us? Ultimately, that was easy for them to build with these giant stones because they had advanced technology, including levitation and things like that. We have the same thing in Jerusalem. And it wasn't until about 20 years ago that the Israelis themselves cut a tunnel going to the left of the Wailing Walls, and they cut a tunnel going into an unexcavated part of King Solomon's temple. And what they found was this giant block here. We don't know how much this block weighs, but it's also like 1,000-ton block of stone. But so King Solomon's temple at Jerusalem is similar to Baalbek. It's built on top of another ancient structure that's gigantically huge, and we don't know what these things were. This is the unfinished obelisk at Aswan in southern Egypt. It's an aerial photo. This is also one of the largest megaliths in the world. A typical obelisk weighs about 500 tons. The unfinished obelisk is important, and it actually weighs about 1,000 tons. But what happened with the unfinished obelisk was that they realized that there was a natural crack in the rock that they hadn't seen yet. And once they saw that crack in the rock, all work on the obelisk stopped because the obelisk wasn't going to be perfect. An obelisk is a monolith. It's granite. It has crystals. Quartz crystals are infused into it. Here's the unfinished obelisk, an old photo of it, how gigantically huge they are. Here's the unfinished obelisk again. Egyptologists don't have an explanation for obelisks. I mean, it's a massive undertaking to create an obelisk, to lift it up out of its quarry, to move it somewhere, and just to stand it up. Modern Egyptians can't do it today. This is a Serapeum in Saqqara, just west of the Giza pyramids in Egypt. But when you go there, it's just flat desert. It's what you're looking at. But then you start walking down these stairs, and you enter into these catacombs. And what's in there are these gigantic basalt boxes. They weigh about 80 tons. They have a giant lid on them. They're huge boxes. But how could they move these 80-ton basalt boxes through these tunnels? What mainstream archaeologists are saying, well, you just get so many hundred people pulling on a rope, and you're wearing harnesses and stuff like that, and you're pulling and you're hauling this just with your brute strength, these giant blocks of basalt into these tunnels, but there's no place for these people to stand. So here's Christopher Dunn, my friend from Manchester. He lives in Illinois now, and he's a great engineer. He wrote the Giza power plant, which I totally endorse. When engineers look at this stuff, they can see that this is tremendously advanced technology and building. This is not done by simple people. These ruins here are in Peru. They're at a place called Ollantaytamboo. And you see here how they're the massive red granite. And this is what you see today when you go to Ollantaytamboo. huge blocks of granite just scattered around like some kids' play blocks that have just been destroyed by an earthquake, or modern archaeologists think that it was just never completed, this structure. And they're saying that the Incas built this only like 100 years or 200 years before the Spanish got there. But this is what it looks like today. This is what it looked like during the Spanish conquest. This is what it looked like during Inca times too. The Incas were themselves, and the Spanish, they were unable to move any of these blocks. What you also see at Ollantaytambo are these things, what are called keystone cuts. They're these T-shaped cuts that are cut into granite, as you see, and sometimes they're hourglass shaped too. But there has to be another one on another block that's fitted together, and it's going to have a corresponding T-shaped keystone cut like this, and then molten metals are poured into the keystone cut. So there's a metal clamp there that's joining two blocks. This is an unusual way of fitting blocks. So in fact, you can see that at Ollantaytambo, this is going around the corner of one of the blocks. You'll see up here towards the top on the right, another keystone cut, but it's on a vertical wall. That's not where a keystone cut can be. A keystone cut has to be on a horizontal wall because molten metals are poured into it. So this keystone cut and this whole block that it's part of, it's not meant to be there. It was meant to be part of something else. As you walk up into what they call the Sun Temple at Ollantaytambo, you go up these stairs, you see again these perfectly fitted but jigsaw granite blocks with these strange knobs. Archaeologists do not know what they're for, although they assume they have something to do with moving the blocks or quarrying, where it's still a mystery of these knobs. You can see these large orange patches of lichen. You come up here. I mean, this is really amazing structure. This is a satellite photo of Lake Titicaca. Lake Titicaca is on the Altiplano of South America, and around Lake Titicaca particularly are all of these strange towers. They're megalithic too, they're called chulpas. This one has an unusual dome on it. It's megalithic, it's also perfectly fitted together. Also near Lake Titicaca are several sites of Silustani, and this one called Cutimbo. Cutimbo is up on top of this mesa up here, and when you hike up there, you see all these strange buildings. Some are towers, some are square buildings. They're megalithic too, perfectly fitted together, partially destroyed in some cases. And one of the things that you see on the buildings there at Cutimbo and at Silustani and other places, also in Cusco, are serpents carved in what we call bas relief on the rocks. So in other words, to have a serpent on these rocks on the left or there in the middle, you actually have to carve all the other part of the rock away and then leave that serpent. So this is especially difficult to make. Some of the other towers have things like pumas on them also, but the serpent symbol is the common one. And here's another serpent in a bas relief on this tower at Cutimbo. Now, what's interesting, we're talking about the Anunnaki and ancient Sumeria. If you go to northern Iraq and Kurdistan, the temples there of the Yazidis, which is really one of the oldest religions in the world, their temples have these same serpents on them. These people are the inheritors, essentially, of the ancient Sumerian religion, of the ancient Sumerian culture. So here we go. Here's a modern photo of one of these temples, again with the serpent on there. So on the southern part of Lake Titicaca is Tiwanaku, and Pumapunku is part of Tiwanaku. This is Bolivia. Half of Lake Titicaca is in Peru, the other half is in Bolivia. This is the great famous Gate of the Sun at Tiwanaku. It's been split in an earthquake. This is a monolithic door. In a sense, it's a door carved into one giant solid piece of granite. They had to have power tools to do this. They had to have the ability, and we still don't know how they did these things, what they did. So this is Pumapunku. We're now looking at the larger area of Pumapunku, which is very much destroyed. You see some of the H blocks in the back. These are huge sandstone platforms. The H blocks are made out of granite. And through excavations, they don't allow you to go into this part of Pumapunku anymore, but you'll see again those keystone cuts that I was talking about earlier. Here we see more of these keystone cuts on the sandstone slabs. These slabs are so big you wouldn't think they would be going anywhere, but they have the molten metal clamps that harden. Here are what some of the clamps look like. They're an alloy, essentially a bronze. All right, now let's go across the Pacific to Vietnam. And this is the same also in Angkor Wat, in Cambodia. You're going to see this at Borobudur in Java. The same keystone cuts. These ones are in basalt. And this is at a city called My Son in central Vietnam. What's also here at Lake Titicaca and Tiwanaku and Pumapunku, if you look to the west, you will see this pyramid. It's a giant pyramid, and the people in the village are looting it. They're excavating it themselves. Now, one of the things that came out of that pyramid or nearby it and that village is this. This is called the Fuente Magna Bowl. And this is the big deal with this bowl, the Fuente Magna Bowl. It has two types of Sumerian writing on it. It has Sumerian hieroglyphs on the right side, and then it has Sumerian cuneiform on the left side. This bowl, it's in the National Museum in Bolivia, but this bowl can't be there. This mainstream archaeology cannot ever recognize this bowl as being authentic, because it would mean that Sumerians had been coming from Sumeria to South America and to Lake Titicaca and to Tiwanaku, and that they were doing some of the mining, and that they were building some of this. And this is an archaeological time bomb in South America, in a national museum. All that mainstream archaeologists can do with this is ignore it. They just pretend it's not there. They just won't talk about it. Okay, everyone likes me to talk about stone balls. So, we'll talk about stone balls now. The main place where we see stone balls and where they're the most famous is Costa Rica. They're various sizes. They're of granite. Archaeologists totally admit and know that these are man-made. They're not natural. These are absolutely artificial. They're actually found out in the jungle, and archaeologists have no explanation for these balls, what they were for, how they were made. I'm told that making a perfectly round granite ball is one of the most difficult things to do. And once again, you probably need a CAD, computer-aided design program, and power tools to create perfect granite balls. And again, this is very hard stone. In Los Angeles, they wanted to build an electric trolley going through from the coast through Santa Monica, going inland. So they brought out some steam shovels to take out these hills in Los Angeles so that the tracks for the trolley could be pretty much level. And what happened when they started digging into this hill? A bunch of stone balls. All right, let's go to Franz Josef Land in the Russian Arctic. This is up near Spitsbergen, but it's to the east. Well, what do you see up there? A bunch of stone balls. These are some stone balls in Bosnia. And now, these ones are in Mexico, Piedras Bolas. They're saying they're natural too. These ones are in Siberia. This is in Dubrovnik in Croatia. Okay, Gongxi in Hunan, China. This is famous for its stone balls. These are stone balls at Malta. Now, let's go to Easter Island. And what do we find there? A stone ball. But in fact, on the north side of Easter Island is a small pen, and it has a stone ball too. with a couple of other small stone balls on it. And Easter Islanders say that on the entire island, this is the most important thing. And near the big airport on Easter Island is this site called Vinapu, which sounds a lot like Vimana. And it's just like walls in Peru, perfectly fitted. I mean, it's been cut by power tools. This is granite, even down to these little notchings and putting a small little block in with these larger blocks. This is the quarry on Easter Island. It's called Rano-Raraku. This is where the giant statues are quarried. Yeah, what you're seeing here with a lot of these statues is that their bodies are deep inside the soil. But here we see, this is also from Thor Heyerdahl's expedition, where you can see how there's 40 feet of this statue underground. So it's like it's been there for a couple of thousand years, and that much soil has built up around the statue. I mean, they can't explain this. But here you can see how deeply buried under the soil many of these statues are. And you see the lichen, big lichen patches and stuff like that. According to the Easter Islanders, what the statues were meant to do, inlaid eyes were put in the statue, and the statues all faced inland, and a power came out of the eyes that they called mana, and it protected the island and kept it from sinking. Because the Easter Islanders say that they were from another continent that they called Hiva. But Hiva's now under the water in the Pacific, and they're saying that Easter Island is the last bit of it. Let's go to the amazing city of Nan Madol. It's on a Micronesian island called Ponape. It is built out of basalt. So 250 million tons of basalt stacked up in these walls, 100 artificial islands. They're actually in the ocean. 250 million tons of basalt. And in fact, they don't know even where all this basalt came from. Entire mountains, much of it's underwater, entire mountains would have been dismantled for all this basalt. I've always been interested in ancient civilizations and Atlantis, Lemuria, Mu, ancient India, all that stuff. The story of Atlantis is the story of a pre-flood civilization. Some civilization that's before, say, 10,000 BC or something like that. The story of Atlantis is an Egyptian story that's told through the Greek philosopher Plato and his uncle Solon, who was a Greek statesman, and he went to Egypt. And the Egyptian priests in Egypt said to Solon, they said, "You Greeks don't even know your own history. Greece is a much older country than you even realize." And then they tell him the story of Atlantis. And Atlantis is out beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the Straits of Gibraltar. Atlantis, in theory, according to Plato, was out in the Atlantic, say perhaps where the Azores are today, and that it had concentric canals that went into a center of a city, and there were huge temples there. There was a large mountain to the north. Atlantis had huge fleets of ships. There's other lost lands too, including this one, Kumari Kandam. This is the Tamils in southern India. They have this tradition that there's literally a lost continent that goes south of India down to Australia and Madagascar. And somehow there's this lost civilization that's underwater in the Indian Ocean.